Hello and welcome back. Within this video, what I'll do is go over the basic layout and syntax within MATLAB. And if we don't spend too much time on that, we'll actually cover a basic introduction to vectors and matrices as well. But as of right now, we'll go over the layout and basic syntax within MATLAB, such as commenting, etc., etc. So I'll open up an instance of MATLAB to guide you guys through. It'll be a tad bit easier if I do this. So to start off, we have our instance of MATLAB open right here, and on the left we can see the current folder. What this basically shows you is your current folder, your current directory path. And this is important because let's say you have a MATLAB code file, let's just call it test, right? And you have test open here, but within the current folder directory path, you're in another folder which doesn't contain the test file, and you want to run or compile this folder or this file right here. What MATLAB will do is actually force you to change the path. So it is pretty much essential to make sure that you're within the correct path of whatever file that you're working on. So right now we have all the files within the same folder, and we are currently on this path as well. You can change your path as well, or you can add different folders to the path, etc., etc. But you can also open different folders as well from up here. Now the second thing is this command window. Now what the command window basically does is, like, if your code has an output, what the window will do is just output the code within the command window. Now we'll get into the actually outputting stuff within MATLAB code later, but as of right now, that's basically what you need to know. And let's say you want to clear whatever is in the command window, what you would do is just type in CLC and it should clear everything. Now actually let me run this again. So the workspace has some variables, and that's what the workspace has. Workspace contains all the variables that you have declared within your MATLAB code. So within test.m I have declared x, y, z, w, etc., etc., etc. And what the workspace essentially does is it stores the variable that you have created as along with whatever it is equal to, whether it be an integer or a string. Now this is important to keep track of all the variables that you have created, but it also shows you if you have like way too many variables or if you're going overboard. We'll actually go into that after this as well. But to get away from just the basic layout of MATLAB and actually get into the syntax, we'll start with some syntax examples. Luckily, this folder has all of them. So syntax example of a comment. So within C++, if you have worked with C++ before, is one would assume that doing this would allow you to comment, but within MATLAB what you have to do is add a percentage sign over here, and whatever is after the percentage sign within that specific line will be the comment. So this is a comment. Now if you want to add comments to multiple lines, what you would do is essentially have a percentage and brace right here, and you can comment different uh, things on different lines and just end it off with the same thing. And this allows you to comment within multiple lines within any MATLAB code. Now, getting into outputting anything within the command window. So we have declared x equals 2 over here. We have declared that the variable x is equal to the integer 2. But notice that we haven't put a semicolon after this. Now this is important because if you do not put a semicolon after anything that you declare, what it will do is it will actually output whatever you have declared within the command window. Notice how with y equals 2 we have put a semicolon and it is not being declared, but the workspace still registers that we have declared a variable y that is equal to 2. This is important if you're debugging stuff or just testing stuff out, or trying to show you guys how this works by outputting stuff to the command window, but essentially this is how you would go about actually outputting stuff to the command window. Now this next part, this mod function, I'll get into this what it actually does right now, but essentially what this sets up is the function block down here. So we'll do this first and we'll come back over here. So function blocks within MATLAB. So just like C++, you have if and else statements within MATLAB as well. And for instance right here, if z is equals to 0, similar to C++, you would output z equals 0. Now this output, notice that we haven't set it equal to any variable, and what MATLAB would essentially do is just set it equal to ants. Ants is basically the default variable if you don't set anything equal to a variable. And we have an else statement here as well. But unlike C++, how you would end like a function block within MATLAB is just by typing in end. Now, in our instance, z was equal to 0, so the output is z equals 0. And I'll show you why that exactly is with the mod function right here. So what mod does is essentially it takes the first variable and the second variable. What it does is it divides the first variable by the second variable, and it takes the remainder and multiplies the remainder by the second variable. So in our instance, y was equal to 2. So what it would do is 2 divided by 2. Do we have a remainder? We have no remainder. So multiply 0 by 2 and return 0 essentially to z. So z is equal to 0. We're going to output this. But if we change this to, let's say, 3, we have a remainder. So the mod should not equal to 0. So let me clear the command window, and I'll clear the workspace as well. What you can do is just right click and clear workspace. And we can run this. And notice how it says z is not equal to 0 because we have a remainder, and now that you know what the mod function does, you'll know that z will not equal to 0, will be equal to 0. Now this next example right here, where w is equal to mod y 3 periods 3 semicolon, what this basically shows you is that with using ellipses, you can essentially have the same function being like addressed within different lines, just like how you see right here. So the same function can go on to different lines but still work. So we can see that w up here is equal to 0, and it is equal to 0 because we have y, which is we just reset it equal to 3, and 3 over here. So 3 divided by 3, no remainder, 0. So w will be equal to 0. Essentially, this is all you need to know about the basic raw syntax of MATLAB, and the layout of MATLAB as well later on when you're actually working with your own MATLAB code. Now that we know this, we can actually get into different like commands that MATLAB offers. So I'll bring the slides back over and present. So MATLAB offers different basic arithmetic as well. So like we can calculate the square root of x, or absolute value, exponential, log, sine, cosine, tangent, etc, etc, etc. You can just pause the video, test all these out if you want. We'll actually go through them as well. But it also offers different polynomial manipulations as well. My favorite is conv over here. So what this essentially does is it takes two different polynomials and multiplies them together. This I find very useful if you're working with, let's say, a polynomial to the 5th order, so like x to the 5, etc, 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 and you have to multiply two different polynomials together. This makes things just stupidly simple. I'll actually show you an example of this as well. So basics, yep, this should be right here. So I'll clear the workspace, clear the command window, and run it. Okay, so we have set or we have declared different variables up here and vectors as well. We'll get into what vectors exactly are within MATLAB right after this, but essentially a vector is an array, a two-dimensional array, and within, like, let's say vector 1 we have said 1, 2, and 3, and within vector 2 we have 5, 6, and 7. Now these are polynomials, specifically quadratic. What you can tell it's a quadratic is because we have x squared. So let's just say x squared plus 2x plus 3. That's a quadratic. Then we have 5x squared, 6x plus 7. You see how the conv function will become very useful later on. So we'll actually go through every single thing, but you should essentially know what a square root or absolute value does. But we'll get into conv as well. So what it would do is it would take the first quadratic and the second quadratic, multiply them, and it'll give you the solution, so you wouldn't have to like handwrite it out. So we would have s squared x 5x to the fourth, 16x cubed, 34x squared, 32x plus 21. So you can do this essentially with whatever order of polynomials you want. This is really useful, and highly advise you guys use this, especially on homework if you don't have the time to raw just write out all the raw math. This makes things super easy, trust me. Now that we know some of the basic inbuilt functions within MATLAB, what we can do is actually get into matrices within MATLAB as well, or rather arrays. So what we'll do is I'll present this first. We're actually pretty good on time. We're at 10 minutes. I don't. Hmm. I'll just make this a separate video, and you guys can watch it as a separate video. That makes more sense. So I'll stop recording right now, and then we'll pick up again right after this with arrays in MATLAB. So see you guys.